Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds trying to find the secret of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series as we reread the entirety of its story from book 1 to book 16 billion. Today we are joined by Swiggity Swoo.
I may have been hasty in my judgment of these bones.
We've got John.
Can't you people see how tired I am?
Kay's here too.
Are we ready to get this assembly meeting started?
And I'm ReaderWarrior. And today we're going to be doing chapters 7 through 11, 7 through 12.
No,
Nope, 7
11.
through
11. You had it right.
11. You had it right.
7 through 11 of Mistborn, The Well of Ascension, Part 1. And the name of the part escapes me at the moment. I am not prepared.
The Heir of the Survivor.
Ah, yes.
I was going to say, I don't remember it either.
Okay,
Cool.
so let's just jump right in then, shall we?
Might as
Unless
well.
anybody wants to give a general thought.
Go for it.
Okay, so I got chapter 7. So in the epigraph,
Cracks knuckles.
yeah, to lift up the paper. So in the epigraph, we hear that Kwan, and it's so nice to actually have names for these instead of the author. Kwan is afraid of a worse threat than the deepness, which we do not know what the deepness is still. So, big threat. Sazed is teaching Plantation Ska how to read and write. They don't really have any tools to hunt or fend themselves with, and they don't really want to move into the manor. And so they're only doing this to really appease Sazed out of true desire to actually learn. As it gets late, Sazed doesn't even realize it. He lets them go and sits at the edge of town, saddened that nobody actually wants to learn. The synod said they were no longer keepers, but instructors to teach what they had been keeping safe. But they see Sazed as a reckless, untrustworthy fool for risking being a part of the rebellion. A woman walks up and Sazed checks his reserves for some reason. He has a pewter mine with a small steel rig for speed. And she
I like that
says
part. Well, because I was thinking about it, right? It's like a little girl that comes up to him, and he is like checking his metal mines, and he wishes he had more strength stored up, and he wishes he had more speed stored up. And
Well,
I was
it's
thinking
'cause
he's
checking.
You
Sorry.
can go ahead.
I would say he's checking them because, she looks worried.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, afraid that something is happening.
I guess that's a good way to put it. Like, it might not be her that he's necessarily worried about, but I was thinking that as a terraceman, he would know not to judge people by their appearances.
And it kind of reads off like he's thinking this woman is a threat. Like I would have put it at the beginning of the next, not chapter, but paragraph.
I think what
Like
you
it
said
has
makes
the-
more sense, though, Kay.
Yeah, no, it's clearly states that he sees that she's because she's running up to him, clearly freaked out about something, worried about something. So he's oh, crap, what's going on? I'm gonna check my metal mines real quick to make sure that I'm prepared in case something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would have put it at the beginning of the next section. Sheev says that the Lord Ruler has returned. And this is where I would put him checking his metal things. But it isn't the Lord Ruler, but a Steel Inquisitor, a familiar one, Marsh. Marsh comments how hard it was to find Sazed. His voice is rougher, just like the other Inquisitors, Sazed thinks. Marsh wants Sazed to come investigate the conventicle, that's a weird word, conventicle of Seran, a ministry stronghold that the Lord Ruler's people ran to and apparently abandoned. Marsh wants Sazed to help before his brethren discover it. Sazed frowns, wondering since when the Inquisitors were Marsh's brothers, and notices how dangerous and emotionless Marsh now seems. Sazed hesitates until Marsh says that the mists are coming out at night, and Sazed agrees to leave. A pretty good straightforward.
Clarification: the mists are coming out during the day.
During the day. Okay.
Yes. And
Apparently,
Sazed doesn't really believe it yet.
yes.
Hmm.
During the day. I don't know why I wrote night. During the night, that's nothing important.
Can I just say it's really cool to see Marsh again?
Yes. Even though it seems like he has some emotional baggage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I like how Freak says it out that he refers to the other Inquisitors as his brethren. Like,
Mhm.
even I was kind of taken aback by that. Like, what does he mean by that? Did he ever, like, really bond with them?
Who knows? Not enough so that he wasn't fine killing all the ones in Luthadel, but
I mean, he clearly knew all their dirty little secrets.
I guess he just considers himself full Inquisitor at this point.
I want the secret chapter set of just when Marsh gets turned into a Steel Inquisitor and then they just go out partying for a week.
Secret History 2.
Welcome to the club!
I'd read that.
That's about it for chapter 7.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Reader got all the short chapters this time.
I think he did that on purpose.
I did not. I didn't even realize that I grabbed both Sasa chapters. I grabbed this one because I thought it was fun. I grabbed 9 because it was short and I didn't want somebody else to have to worry about it.
That's funny. I thought you did it on purpose. I was like, oh, these were 2 good chapters to get. They're both Sazed.
Hearing that, I'm starting to think maybe I should just pretend to be as smart as people think I am.
That's what I usually do. So should we move on to chapter 8 then?
Chapter 8?
Yeah.
All right, that's what I had. This chapter is all from Vin's perspective. And it starts with her doing her nightly patrols. And she's really enjoying flying through the mists. She's kind of thinking about, like, what did I ever do without this? And I love those chapters in Mistborn, personally. But she's not alone. She has Orsur with her, who, if you remember from last time, is in the body of a dog still. And she decides to send... Yeah. Well, that's like one of my favorite things in this chapter, is that he starts to kind of come around on it. But she, like, for whatever reason, she decides to send him on a chase. And she's, like, flying through Luthadel, and she's shooting, like, a ricocheting bullet through the streets. And
I say, well, she wants to send him on a chase because she wants to have an excuse to leave him behind.
Right.
Absolutely. I was getting that, too, because they kind of have a conversation about it later, and she just comes back to thinking, like, he ate Kelsier. Like, that's what she always comes back to.
Mm-hmm.
But she can't leave him behind, because turns out being in that body is actually really cool, and he can, like, jump from rooftop to rooftop, and he keeps up with her the whole way.
The nose knows.
Yeah, like, he could find her in the dark just by the scent of her, which is kind of cool. It's like, so she, besides her trying to make excuses, she has to, like, begrudgingly admit that he actually would be pretty useful to come along with her. And he admits that he's kind of enjoying having the dog body. Like, that's what my intro was. I may have been hasty in my judgment of these bones.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't just sit there and talk, because soon the Watcher shows up. And I'm kind of skipping ahead. Like, she's thinking a lot about, like, Straff, and she's thinking about what Daralman might do. And, like, she thinks, oh, if aluminum gets rid of all your metals, maybe duralumin makes your metals last longer, which is not exactly the case. But anyways, she thinks she sees like that mist creature from before, but it's actually the Watcher. And she starts to chase him down. And she has this line where she says, like, tonight I'm going to catch you, my friend. And I really thought that she was like embodying Kelsier when she said that. And it's kind of cool too, because her chasing him down is like the first time she's had that experience of like facing down another Mistborn since Kelsier was alive. And it's clear that she's kind of missed this a little bit. And I love the part where it's talking about how, you know, she's come such a long way since she's had her powers, but the only person she's ever fought was Kelsier, who's only ever had his powers as long as she has now. So she's never faced someone down who was like super experienced, unless you count Shan or some of the other Mistborn she's faced. But we really don't know how long anyone else has had their powers. But
Yeah.
I like this idea that it's like, you know, finally somebody who's actually really skilled. She briefly thinks he looks familiar too. I thought that was an interesting detail. So they kind of end up fighting a little bit. It's a pretty good fight scene, but I'm not gonna go into like all the details of it.
It was very cinematic.
Yeah, it
Him
was like around
splashing
a
about
fountain.
the fountain. I was
I
thinking
could
it was like
picture it.
in the fountain, and you could have spring water throughout it. I could see it.
That's what I was picturing too. They're both like maybe like knee high in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually he gets away and runs off, and she tracks him down, and he's like hiding, and she uses her ability to pierce copper clouds to find out where he is. And she's like, I got an idea. Maybe the duralumin, for whatever reason, affects Alamancer's perception of me. So, burning tin and all this, she uses her duralumin, and immediately, like a flashbang of senses hits her, and she's like knocked out for a little bit, which does sound like one of the most painful things of all time.
Yeah.
And when she wakes up, Orser is there, and he's like, "Hey, I got your metal vials, you know, good boy." And then the Watcher shows up. He's like, "Why did you pass out?" And she's like, "Oh, I just did it to lure you to me," which is like kind of like when a cat falls over and it starts licking its paw. It's like, yeah, I meant to do this. So she asks who he is, and he says an enemy, and she asks, "Why did you save me?" And he says, "Because I'm insane." And then he asks her, "Did you really kill the Lord Ruler?" And she says yes. And then he asks, "Why do you play their games?" Because insinuating that if she's so strong and she's such a force that she took down the Lord Ruler, what is she doing? Like helping the government. And she's like, "Oh, but I love them." And that seems to piss him off, so he flees into the night, and she decides not to follow him. And we learn that Orsur can store metal vials in his flesh, which is really useful and cool.
Yeah.
All right, that's chapter 8.
Cruising right along.
So I thought I have a couple of little things. First of all, at the beginning, Ben is talking about like the strength of pushes and how it's difficult to push softly on it. And I think it would be really cool if we actually got to see more of that, because pushing hard against something, that's how you get the sunburst, that's how you push against a person. But it would be really cool to have this soft nudge. Another thing I noticed was Vin closes her eyes and she can see the steel lines still.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I like that detail too.
Is that...
Because,
Sorry.
well, it's kind of like it's like a miniature version of what you would have if you had a spiked eye, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of similar to like how we know that the Inquisitors see, is
Mhm.
because they can still see and they can see the lines of the metal around them, even though they have the spikes through their eyes. So it's like a little
We
bit
saw
similar.
when
For
Vin threw the pewter dust at the one Inquisitor back in Final Empire.
Well, no, we
Jeez.
saw an Inquisitor's point of view in Final Empire, where he talks about that.
Yeah, but
So.
also like we saw when he went through a bunch of metal shavings in his face and he was blinded because all he could see was the lines.
Yeah.
I did
But
not
yeah.
correlate that being what an Inquisitor sees up. That was cool. I was just wondering if it was more so you could actually see it with your eyes closed as they were not something necessarily your eyes saw, or was it sort of how you can tell when a light is on when your eyes are closed or not?
I think it's that it's not necessarily something that your eyes are seeing. Like, you're not really seeing with your eyes, you're more seeing, like, your
You see with
cognitive
your eyes, but
self.
you perceive with your mind.
Yeah, it's like your cognitive self is kind of connecting to those things. So it doesn't really matter if your eyes are open or not.
It's a whole nother sense.
Dun, dun, dun. And the last note I had is that the Watcher doesn't ask, "Did you kill the Lord Ruler?" He asks, "Did you kill him?" Capital H.
That's a cool
Anything
detail.
But she knows that he's talking about the Lord Ruler.
But usually authors, when doing that, would do the HIM, no capital, but have it in italics. But it's the fact that this is God, basically. He's still capital H, him. There's really no need to do the implication of it. This is a direct question.
Ish. It depends on how you look at it, because if you think about it, the Watcher, whose name we don't know yet, likely follows the what do they call it? The Church of the Lord Ruler or whatever.
The Steel Ministry.
Steel Ministry. That's it. So he may literally be referring to him as capital H God.
True,
From that perspective.
But it's also everybody currently kind of is forced to follow that religion. And even though, he's dead, people are still referring to him as God.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the Ska are starting to revere Kelsier instead.
This is true.
So
The Church of the Survivors going up.
It was clear who he was referring to when he said that, and
Yeah,
that's powerful.
It was more so, I like the way that it wasn't directly stated.
Yeah, like that's the legend of the Lord Ruler, and I love that. You didn't have to say who it was; you automatically knew.
Yeah. Anything else for chapter 8?
Vin does a pewter superhero landing, and I thought that was funny.
She does.
Yeah.
She's like, instead of throwing out a coin, she just burned pewter and landed hard.
Spat on her knees.
Terrible for your knees.
Gonna get arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
Actually had that written down too, that it's hard to push softly, and flying is more like ricocheting. But there is grace to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I had, yeah.
Okay. I've got chapter 9. Very short chapter. Literally 3 sentences, basically. So we've got, in the epigraph, we got Quan, the writer, and Lendi, the hero of ages, are old friends. That's pretty much it. Sazed and Marsh are walking together and notices how he seems different, more so like the namesake of Iron Eyes as they make their way. Marsh says Sazed should be in Luthadel, ordering him to head back after their journey. And Sazed pauses and realizes that, yeah, he's right, he should. That's it.
That's weird that they would even break up these chapters like that. You think they could have had...
I mean, it kind of makes sense because it's a nice... It shows the break between the Vin chapter and then the flip into chapter 10. Kind of a nice, like, kind of in between. And it also highlights, like, Sazed and Marsh's relationship a little bit more, because it talks a little bit about how Sazed was the only one to really try to, like, continue, like, getting to know Marsh as after he became an inquisitor, like Cecid purposefully like took time to go talk to him.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is good on
and-
him, but
yeah,
he now has spikes coming out of his eyes that would set people off.
Yeah.
But this definitely seems like a chapter that could be, removed from the movie.
well, you would just kind of lump it in with the. If
Yeah,
you were to include it, you would lump it in with the previous.
yeah.
Go to Luthadel, Cecid. The people need you.
Yeah.
I like the line of there's more kinds of protection than just physical when talking about how he could protect Vin. Even though she's all like super badass now with Mistborn powers. Doesn't need defending.
She needs help.
She's got a lot of emotional baggage still.
She really does.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, do we want to move on to the next chapter?
Of course, you got the Elend chapter.
So in the epigraph, we learn a little bit more about a description of Elendi, who was the original hero, and we learn that he was really tall. He was very tall, and like towered over people.
Which aren't the terracemen typically really tall as well?
Yes.
So, geez, I don't want to imagine.
in
But Alendi was not Terrace.
correct.
Yeah. But I'm saying even to a terrace person, this guy is big.
Oh, sure. I see what you mean. Yeah. Makes sense.
So this chapter is we finally get to learn more about the assembly and how the government is working. Yay! So the assembly hall is
Not working.
in the former Canton of Finance, the Steel Ministry's Canton of Finance headquarters, which I thought was interesting. They put it in there. Essentially they put it in a lecture room. Which I just thought was funny. So, and they have the seats on the stage, they have the seats for the assemblymen, and then they have a lectern that faces kind of away from the crowd, because the person who's at the lectern facing towards the assemblymen is not talking to the crowd, they're talking to the assemblymen. To kind of make that distinction that you're not doing this for the people watching, you're supposed to be like doing it for the other assemblymen.
Mm-hmm.
So Vin's seat is also on the stage because she demanded she needed to be there to help protect Elend. So
Naturally.
She
and
cares.
yes, she does. And we learn a little bit more about what the society is like. So there's the new class of merchants, who, as it says, are kind of the ones who won out the best from Elend's new rule, because they are now able to like set their own prices. They're essentially anyone can become a merchant if they want to. It doesn't just have to be the super skilled ska craftsman. Anyone can rise to that rank of a merchant. And so we see the assembly. So the assembly, there are 24 people in the assembly, including Elend. So there are 7 noblemen plus Elend, 8 merchants, and 8 ska workers.
8 of each?
Yes, 8 of each. And Min is kind of thinking to herself, like, she doesn't really like the assembly very much, because she feels like they just kind of bully Elend and take his power away from him as king.
Politics.
Yeah, you know. And we definitely see this in action when Elend is trying to get his proposal across. So his proposal is to, essentially for time, for more time for him to meet with Strathventure. So essentially saying that the assembly can't turn over the city or do anything about the army until Elend meets with his father. And immediately when Elend finishes his speech, the assembly members start just arguing back and forth, and it just devolves into chaos, and people go off on tangents about other things.
I love there's
Politics,
one
am I
guy.
right?
There's one guy who's immediately just like, we need to go to Straff and we need to beg him to forgive
Beg.
us.
Well, and there's also the one person who's like, why are we talking about this now? We should be talking about the prices of food. It's outrageous. And it's like, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. Like,
But it is a pressing issue.
yes,
like
but
the
it's
worst
not.
of every
Yeah, but who
crazy
cares
town hall
about the
meeting.
collapse of a kingdom when all the people are dead from starvation?
Yeah, but it was just kind of interesting to see that the chaos and the dynamic of it, and we see a little bit of the dynamics. So we learn the names of the kind of lead, the main merchant that we know is Phylon, and the main nobleman that we know is
Parod.
Parod. Yes.
I call him Penrod.
I think, yeah.
Penrod.
In the
Penrod.
audiobook,
Penrod.
it's Penrod.
Yeah.
I call him Penrod.
Penrod. Lord Penrod is
Poindexter.
the kind of main nobleman, and you kind of see that Lord Penrod has a lot of power within the assembly because he backs Elend's proposal, and the second that he backs Elend's proposal, suddenly everyone actually starts to actually consider it.
All the noblemen specifically.
The noblemen and some of the other people as well.
Yeah, I like the idea that this new business class of Ska have a lot of sway in the local government.
Yes.
Because we know that when the vote carries, none of the merchants vote for it.
Yes, none of the merchants voted for it, and most of the Ska voted for it, and so did most of the noblemen. So he had his 2/3 majority that he needed for it to pass. So, and then immediately after he gets it to pass, Phylon goes up and has his own proposal, and Elend joins in the chaos of arguing.
I love that.
Yeah, which Finn is just like, does he not see that he is doing the exact same thing that he complains that they do to him?
That's why I love it. It's because, we know who Elend is. We know what he's trying to do. And yes, his stuff is for the good and betterment of the kingdom. But he still falls victim to the government act, the political aspect of it all.
Yeah.
And how, wait, this isn't what we should be focused on. My things are more important.
Yeah, and we can definitely see that he really doesn't have a lot of power within the government itself. Because to do this one thing, he had to get 2/3 majority from the assemblymen. And kind of when he leaves the lectern and he goes and sits down, he's just another one of the assemblymen now. He's not the king. He's an assemblyman, which is kind of elevating they're all at the same status. So they all kind of think that they're at the same status as Elend, even if it's not really supposed to be that way.
Which would be a good thing, but not in this case.
Yes.
Well, because it's sort of by design, right? He's not supposed to.
He's not supposed to have extreme more power than the people.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this scenario where they're trying to struggle to keep this local or to keep their government in check, but every Ska with $2 to his name thinks he has a stake in the government, and it's like, that's great and all, but all these people have all these opinions, and it's like too many cooks in the kitchen right now when there's armies literally marching down the gate. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting to note that Vin makes a note that there are obligators still in the city. Elend did not kick out the obligators. He is still allowing them to practice and
Freedom of religion.
teach the religion of the Steel Ministry, as long as they promise not to incite rebellion.
Promises.
Yeah. Which I thought was an interesting note, that he is still allowing them to be in the city. And lastly, Vin notices someone in the crowd. And she goes over to talk to Elend about it. And the person that she notices in the crowd is a terrace woman. And the reason she's pointing it out to him is because this terrace woman has not introduced herself to Vin yet. And every other terrace person who has come to Luthadel, the first thing that they have done when they've gotten to the city is introduce themselves to Vin. So Vin is like, weird. Seems odd. So she's a little suspicious, and Elend is like, you're suspicious of a terrace woman? Like, what are you doing? So, yeah.
Probably nothing, right? She's just being paranoid.
Yeah. Probably nothing. She's just being paranoid. And at the very end, one of Clubs' messengers runs in to the assembly hall and tells them that they're not being attacked, but there is a second army approaching.
Dun, dun, dun.
What's better than one army?
Two
armies.
Oh. Going full Sesame Street at this point.
I got nothing else to say. You cover pretty much everything. Anything else for chapter 10?
No, I'd say we can move on. I'm dying to get into the spoiler section.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah. I will try and motivate quickly through this then.
Don't worry about it. It's just now that the first 5 chapters were like, okay, here's what's been going on. Now we're actually getting into here's how the plot will develop.
Right.
Yes, we are actually doing things now.
Yeah.
Things are happening.
But we can't do things until the crew is back in town, and there's still one important member left.
Kelster, 6 feet under.
You mean Sazed?
You mean Marsh?
We've already talked about Sazed and Marsh.
But
they've already been brought into the
But they're not in town.
I guess they're not in town yet, but we know they're on their way. We've seen what they're doing and what they've been up to. But my boy Breeze
has been auspiciously absent.
He has. And he's been clever about what he's doing with his time. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Elend and Clubs are standing up on the walls with Vin, looking out. They're like, oh no, another army. This is not good. And they spend a little bit of time debating about how the crew would have survived it. By the way, this is, at this point in the chapter, it's Elend POV. But the POV kind of hops around.
Well, it's Elend's, but he's describing how, Vin probably sees things with tin, or Spook does. I can't see squat.
But later in the chapter, it switches to Vin as she goes and does her thing. Yeah. Which we'll get to that in a moment, but I wanted to point that out.
We like Elend point of views here.
I know you do.
This is a very
Um,
Elend positive podcast.
Are you pointing it out because you got another Elend POV
I
chapter?
am. Yes, this is so bizarre.
There's a lot more in this book, so you know.
As
Yeah,
long as
what are
I
you
get to
gonna do?
keep doing fight scenes.
Hey, I mean, all right. So they're standing on top. They're watching the army. Elend is pontificating about what it would be like to have, you know, any kind of metal power, and they're debating about what they're going to do about the armies and how the crew would have survived. When Vin sees somebody coming on horseback from the new army, and they're not doing it at a casual pace, because initially they're like, "Ooh, it could be a messenger." No, this is somebody going at like Mach 7 or the horse equivalent thereof. And she's looking, and she goes, "Wait, that's Breeze!" And she's like, "Why is he going so fast? What's going on?" And then a bunch of archers on horseback come galloping out, following after him, and she's like, "Oh no, not Breeze!" So she goes and decides. Well, first they're like, "Well, send riders, go rescue him," and then Vin's like, "No, they won't. They'll never make it in time. I must go." And she goes to rescue her people with Duralumin by doing one of the most epic things that she has done yet. Just literally leaping off, not a building, not just like a wall, but a whole city, and flying across this open expanse to the rescue of her compatriot.
Like a cannon.
Like
Shoots
a
herself.
cannon, like a freaking human cannon made of steel and tiny teenage girl.
Elend is like, you'll
Right?
never make it. It's too far even for you. She's like,
I
watch
got
this.
new medals.
Hold my
Watch
ale.
this.
She just looks at him and goes, "Never tell me the odds." So she launches herself out there. You were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, I always imagine that you see like an air pressure cone around her as she does it.
Totally.
You
Meanwhile,
hear a
all
boom.
Well, I don't
all
want to imply she broke the sound barrier because that seems a little extreme, but you do see the wind curve, the air curve.
But like you hear a sound when something goes really fast. Like if you shoot something off really quickly.
True.
I'm
But I
picturing
don't want to
like,
imply that she broke the sound barrier.
like Neo at the end of the Matrix 1. She
Right.
just shoots up into the air.
Yeah, all the little people watching below are like, "It's a bird, it's a plane, it's that crazy chick who killed God." And so as she's flying across, we kind of switch into Vin's POV, and she's like, "Whoa, this is really weird. I don't normally see the ground coming at me this fast." But she keeps her wits about her enough to realize that, oh, hey, I'm out of steel. I better drink some more metals, which she does. And she does, she lands, and she pushes the arrows back at the archers just as they're firing on Breeze. And actually, it ends up like splitting one in the forehead with his own arrow, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
And they're like, "Oh no!" She starts kind of like pushing them with their armor and stuff, and they're like, "Get out the stone arrows!" And they start shooting the stone-tipped arrows, and she's like, "Nah, bro, I ain't got time for this." And she Duralumin pushes the horse's hooves, and just riders go everywhere. And it is probably the coolest visual that I think we've had in any of these books yet, because she's just like, and all the horses and riders are just like, "Ah!" It's very cool. I enjoyed that bit.
Yeah, she had like a hard time controlling it. She was like, I need to think better about my anchors that I'm using next time because people went flying.
Yeah. So her and Breeze make their escape back into Luthadel. They open the doors for them, and we get a nice little chat with Breeze talking about what have you been doing? Why are you here? What happened? And he explains that he was working on Lord Set, excuse me, to get him to come and besiege Luthadel. And they're like, "So you were the one spreading the rumors?" And he goes, well, of course. How else was I going to get them to come here? So they're
They're
on
like,
our
"You
side?
Like, we
He's like,
sent you
no.
out to do the exact opposite. You had one job.
And he was very clever about realizing that that one job wasn't going to work. Because with 2 armies besieging the city, whichever one the city aligns with is more likely to win if those 2 armies are evenly matched, which they assume that they are roughly evenly matched. So we have that, and then Breeze is like, they're like, oh, we need to go back up and take a look, and Breeze is like, I am not climbing those stairs. Can't you people see how tired I am? I'm exhausted. I've been
He's like,
soothing
"I've been
you for like
soothing
5 minutes. Somebody get me a carriage. So
I
and
miss
eventually, I love Breeze. Breeze and Ham, just when they interact, is some of the golden moments of these books.
I love in this one when he comes back and he's like their love-hate relationship when they meet after not seeing each other for a while. And this chapter is awesome.
Yeah, Ham is like, oh, come on. You missed seeing me around. He's like, seeing you? Maybe. Hearing you? Never.
Never.
So eventually they go back and forth a little bit and they have their little quippy talks, and it's fun and enjoyable, and they go back to the palace, and they're kind of interrupted by a guard who's like, we need you to come and take a look at something. And
You better take a look at this cliche.
Vin's like, uh-oh, what happened? And Ellen's like, oh no, what's going on? And they go and look, because apparently it's something in Vin's quarters. And
Which
it's a
are
basket
Ellen's
of human
quarters.
bones. Yes, yeah, there. But anyway, yeah, it's a basket of human bones, and they're like, we didn't know if you knew about this, but like, there's a corpse.
There's
Here you
a
go.
body in
There's
your
a
closet.
corpse. And she's just like, oh no, those are supposed to be there. That's fine.
Yeah, she's like, oh, don't worry about that. I just forgot to dispose of those. Like, it was like on her chores list for the day.
Oopsie.
It's on her to-do list.
Right. And Orsir's like, oh, I thought you were going to get rid of those. And she's like, yeah. And then the guard's like, oh, but what about this one? Did you know about this one? And they're like, dun dun dun.
Oh, so
And
we can throw these
everybody
ones
has
away
a small
too.
little panic because they don't know where this other body came from. But they do know that it was created the same way as the other one. It was eaten by a Khandra.
Dun, dun,
Which
dun.
means that someone is being impersonated by a Khandra and is therefore dead and eaten. End part 1.
Well, it's implied
And-
that anybody, but more so worriedly, one of the crew.
Right.
And that
yes.
there is an imposter among us.
Nice.
I couldn't help myself. Gotta add the Among Us tag on this one just to get the ad revenue.
And get the clicks.
Yeah.
Get that Among Us SEO. Well,
But yeah, so that's chapter 11.
John is definitely the most animated out of all of us.
I try to keep it like entertaining, I guess.
If Rhythm of War is Die Hard, then this is the thing.
Yeah,
Because you never know.
I like that.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? Huh.
A little bit.
So I'm going to go over my notes. At the very beginning, Elend is referring to he wants one of the weak powers, and he calls iron a weak power.
Really? To be a lurcher is weak? I resent that.
Yeah.
That's the one
Well, I guess
picked.
compared to, flying, it's not that cool, but to be able to force pull things at you would still be awesome.
I guess it's because you can't use it offensively.
Mhm.
Is why he thinks of it as a weak power. It's an entirely defensive power.
But it's good
Or-
when it's used in tandem with other powers, like the people that have the shields
Yes.
that pull the coins to them.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
offensively lazy. I mean, wine cup.
Yeah. When Vin does the big old derailment push against like the horses, is she using an anchor there? Is she pushing against anything else behind her as she does this push?
I feel like they made mention of her having an anchor, but it wasn't like strong enough to like actually hold her in place against all that. Because
I
she
was just-
immediately follows it up with, "I need to use better anchors."
Yeah, so I'm wondering, does a derailment enhanced steel push negate the rule of weight?
No, I think it was implied, at least I thought it was that she was in the kind of center of the horses and just pushed outwards on all of them at the same time.
I
Oh, that
thought
kind of
she was-
changes how I pictured this.
Yeah, I always pictured
I
as
was-
like, Breeze is running away behind her, they're coming at her.
Yeah, me
So,
too. She's kind of
well,
in between
yeah,
them.
But
yeah, that
I
makes
think,
way more sense if she's like in the middle of the.
yeah, if I
herd.
remember from what I thought, it was that she jumps into like the middle of them, pushes outward to like shove them all at the same time, and then shoves off of one of them to catch up to Breeze.
See, I was thinking like she pushes off of something as an anchor, or a couple things as an anchor, and then she pushes on the rest of them. And then what she used as an anchor via the transfer of forces just goes flying, like super, super far back, way further than anything else, because it's being thrown against the weight of what she's pushing on, like all those horses. But I do want to say, if Elend thinks that steel pulling is a weak power offensively, he should reread chapter like 3 or 4 of the Final Empire, where Kelsier kills like 6 dudes with a paperweight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been a few instances where people get clocked in the back of the head with something that's been,
Yeah.
pulled at them.
I'm not saying where it says that, Kay, but that's definitely headcanon now. That makes a lot more sense than anything else.
Right? I think you've convinced us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
I
more
mean,
sense than what I thought.
That's how I pictured it.
There was another fun little bit. I didn't write it down, and I should have, but it just occurred to me while we were talking about this. There's a point where she's like shooter running alongside the horse, and the horse is like looking at her like, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
I would like to point out it does say that she did get launched during when she Duralaman pushed against all of the soldiers,
Horses.
the horses.
Okay.
It does say that
thought so.
that it says that she goes spinning through the air. So she did get pushed in the other direction.
Okay. So derailment
So she went
enhancement
flying.
isn't just necessarily you push harder. It's more of the elementic strength that we had already known that Vin is elementically stronger with pushing than Kelsier was. And that's how she was able to hold her own in a shoving match, even though she is, by all accounts, very much not in his weight class. But each.
I also thought it was hilarious that instead of just going through the gates like a normal person, she jumped up and over them.
I love how when she's describing Breeze, she's like, he has no hat. It must have fallen off in the chase. Not implying that he didn't have a hat, that at some point he did. That Breeze definitely had a hat and he lost it.
All right, I'm just going to say it. That reminds me of Wayne. Sorry, people who haven't read those.
Don't worry about it. And my other comment was Demu is back, and we see him again.
You moo moo.
And he is the assistant captain of the palace guards.
Promotion.
Promotion.
I'm ready. Promotion.
Anything else for this chapter? This was a good chapter. I enjoyed both reading it and enjoyed John's telling of it.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I could entertain.
And it does have that dichotomy of like really happy, like, ooh, we got our friends back, and then suddenly like that.
One of them's a traitor.
Yeah.
And it was an emotional roller coaster of like, oh, Breeze is here, and then well, it was your idea to bring 2 armies, and then like actually that's a really good idea.
Oh, look, it's Breeze. He's about to die. I saved him. He brought an army. He did it on purpose?
Is this the best Mistborn chapter? It's got like action, a little bit of
That's why I
romance.
grabbed it right away. I was like, I read my chapters like the day after we did the last one, and I'm like, fuck this one. This one's fun.
This is definitely one of the best chapters of this book.
Also, Vin in this chapter makes the conscious decision to not tell the crew yet about the switch with poor Sir and the dog in the dog's body. So.
Forgot to mention that. Good catch, Kay. Good catch.
Anything else for chapter 11? Man, we just breezed right through all of that.
But
Pun intended.
You're such a ham.
I feel like these chapters were shorter than other chapters.
I think
yes,
so.
Yeah.
Especially, what was it, 9? It was like 4 sentences or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But also, I think now we're getting back to the groove. Now things are actually picking up. We're getting a story again. Like the first one, we were talking about how, oh, this is all us kind of knowing the characters again. Here's what kind of happened in the past year. Here's what things are going on. Now there's a second army now. Finn's fighting the Watcher. Sazed and Marsh are checking out this conviction of Seran. Not conviction, but the word
Conventicle.
Conventicle.
It's no critic's job, but it's a pretty cool name.
I mean, I dig it.
Yeah. It's conventic.
What is a conventicle? Is that a real word?
I don't know.
I'll check real quick. Of relating to a convent. So yeah. A conventicle originally signified no more than an assembly and was frequently used by ancient writers for a church, which makes a lot of sense considering it's a ministry building.
It does indeed.
The more you know.
Cool.
Okay, are we ready for our spoiler section?
Wow, and less than an hour in. Okay. Thank you so much for sticking around so far into this episode. We're going to go into the spoilers section next. We highly recommend that if you have not read this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, you stop here because it's likely we'll talk about everything and anything. However, you are up to date on the story, please feel free to stick around. It's likely we will bring up details that you may have forgotten or plot threads that are still yet to come. Please be sure to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, or whatever it is on this video or audio, and don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. We would love to hear from you. But this is where we leave you. And my name is Reader. I've been joined by Swiggity Swoo.
Hey, thanks for listening.
John as well.
Bye-bye.
And last but not least, Kay.
Have a good night.
And this has been Cosmere Connections. And we're back.
Let's talk some
Yay.
spoilers.
See, now we have this part. I feel like we actually are starting to get into where there are more spoilers stuff to talk about.
Especially for within the book itself, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Oh, but to make the point of the pushing, Reader had asked earlier, he had said that would be cool if we saw like small pushes and pulls at some point in time, and we actually do see it later on in this book. Zane does it.
Oh,
Zane does some really small, precise push and pull movements later on in this book.
That's how he does his hovering thing.
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay. Oh, I never made that connection. Thank you.
So, yes. So, and in the, and that's how, in Era 2, Wax does his, like, steel bubble thing, is he's just kind of lightly pushing on everything around him.
Yeah. So let's move back to chapter 7. Do this in chronological order, kind of.
What? Chronological order?
We never do that.
Stick to a
I've only got
format?
2 spoiler notes, really. And that is Marsh complete? Is everything of Marsh ruined right now?
I think so, but I think Marsh still has some control, but like he still has his mind mostly, and he's not as fully controlled as he is in book 3. But
Yeah,
I do think that he is under a significant amount of control from Ruin.
I think at this point, well, we know that he's got enough spikes in him that Ruin can just come and go as he pleases in Marsh's head. So I think at this point, I feel like Ruin is just now getting to a point where he can kind of start actively taking control. So I think he can do it, but it's not like.
I would say
Constant.
the distinction. Sorry, I would say the distinction is that it's basically in terms of like allomancy as an example. Like he's doing extreme emotional allomancy on him, making him do what he wants, like what Breeze does to but an infinitieth degree. Whilst in Hero of Ages, it's direct, just I control you.
Right.
Maybe.
Like there's very little distinction, but one is I'm tricking you to do all this. I'm putting you in the mindset to do this. I'm making you think like this. While the other one is I don't care what you want. This is just me putting my hand up your back and you talk how I want to talk. And my other note is Seran. I did not know that new Seran from Era 2 was based upon this.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
It's
didn't even
weird
think of
hearing
that.
you say it like that because Michael Kramer pronounces it differently.
He says Seran,
Yeah.
which sounds like a
I
Pokemon sound.
pronounce it Seran.
Ooh,
But I
give me a
did not-
second. I'm gonna look up something. I'm gonna be back.
Okay, just pause break. What are you looking up, Kay?
So, I don't know if you guys looked at the maps in the Lost Metal.
Not really. I don't like maps.
Let's take a look.
So the map that there are 3 maps that we have in Lost Metal. So we have our map of the Elendil Basin that we've seen a lot of. We have our map of Elendil. And then we also have this 3rd map that is new to this book. And in it, I'll see if I can find a copy to post in the chat. But in it, you can actually see the different places from Era 1. So,
You can see Halfsin. You can see Old Terrace.
You can see the River Shonarel. You can see the Tyrian Sea. You can see where the ash mounts were. If you look for it, there's the farmost. There's Farmost, which is the farmost dominance. There's Fall.
Sin.
There's Hathsin. Yeah. So I was wondering,
I'm not seeing Seran there.
is where is New Seran versus where the Conventicle of Seran is. I was just curious.
I think you would have to check.
I'm
Fancy.
literally looking at it right now. I'm comparing maps right now. So,
Well, we know
'cause I'm
Sazed went south, right? So it should be
Yeah.
south of the Elend Basin.
yeah. So it's over here. It's near Lost Doriel is where the Conventicle of Seran is. It is down. New Seran is near where the Conventicle of Seran was.
Wow.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's the
it's-
Well, it
Seran
was
range.
implied that when Harmony remade, he kept things mostly the same.
Yeah, but I just thought it was that I just think that that's interesting that that New Seran is in Era 2 is in pretty much the same area, same similar place as where the Conventicle of Seran is.
It's like right on the edge. It's like right on the south of the Elendel Basin is where New Seran is. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
I was just more so surprised at seeing, oh, Seran was an actual thing in Era 1.
Yeah. Sorry, that just made that I didn't make that connection until you just said that. So that's why I was like, "Oh my god, wait."
I got nothing else for Chapter 7. Spoiler notes for Chapter 8, then. So we've got some slight discrepancies with the differences between Tensoon and Orsier that seem really obvious in hindsight.
Hindsight's 2020.
When to look for them, yeah. What did you pick out? Because I had basically he's doing things that Orsor wouldn't have done, and then just blaming it on the contract. But she mentions it like at least twice, like, oh, this is more than you've ever done before.
So, like him, she didn't tell him to bring her metal pouch. He did that of his own accord. She didn't have to command him to follow her on the
And he
night.
tried to keep following her.
He tried to keep up with her. He was doing it because she didn't have to command him by virtue of the contract to follow her. Like, as opposed to Sir, who, as we can tell, was trying to essentially find any way to get out of being helpful. Like he was trying to not be helpful to her.
See, I had an epiphany about Orsier, that he's an actor, right? That was his whole thing. He's one of the great actors.
Mm-hmm.
He played Renew so well that not even people who knew him could tell he was an imposter. Renew is just an actor that does not do skit work. He does not do, oh, I don't have a script. I can do what I want. Sure, I'm fine with that. He needs a story. And for him to be with Vin, and he's just like, what's my story? She's like, you do what I say when I say it. It's like, no, I need character. What's my backstory? What's my reason?
What's my motivation?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is why Sir didn't like Vin, was because she didn't give him something to do. She wasn't giving him a role to play, which is what he's used to, was what he usually expects to happen. So he's like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't have a role to play. What am I doing?
Yep.
So what is Tensoon's goal at this stage? Because I cannot remember.
Gather
it's just
information, get her to
spy.
trust him. Yeah,
Yeah.
just being a
general
general
spy
spy.
stuff.
Kandra need to breathe? Like, there was like, even going back to the last part, like, we saw that they bled. Since when do Kandra... Is this just something that Era 1 they could do, they needed, that they figure out they didn't in Era 2?
I was questioning that as well, because they exist in states with no lungs, presumably for periods of time.
Yeah.
I don't think they do need to breathe, technically. I think
mean,
that, but when
nothing's
they're
stopping them from making gills.
Is it a matter of oxidizing the muscles that they now have? Is it not so much that they themselves need to breathe to survive, but it's a fact of keeping the body able to work?
no, because as we see in spoilers for Tress of the Emerald Sea, for anyone who has not read it yet, real quick, when we see what's his face in Tress, the Kandra, Ulam, he makes a comment that he doesn't need to breathe.
Mhm. So this is all just Era 1. They haven't really explored themselves that much yet.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they haven't really
I will say,
explored the Kandra as a people, like what they can do. Like they're so focused on the imitation.
like, this is reading
stuff.
a lot into it, but I was reading through that chapter again for the summary, and I was thinking about how, like, Vin is at that part of the chapter thinking about, like, how he would be useful, because he can bring her metal vials and all that. But she's also like, then why am I trying to leave him in the dust? Why don't I want him to follow me around? And
He ate Kelsier.
yeah, it's like right around that line where she also notices, like, oh, I didn't even think Conjures needed to breathe. And I just thought that was kind of a cool way of seeing, like, she doesn't think of them as people, really. Like, she wouldn't even have considered that they might need to breathe. Like, she didn't even ask that question.
Or like before, when it was still Orser, he makes a commentary. He's like, you probably didn't realize that we feel pain as well.
Yeah.
Like,
which I kind of like how, like, the Conjures go from just being these body snatcher crazy monster things to eventually you find out, like, they have this whole society and they have this whole, like, form of kind of government and, like, chain of command and all that.
John, anything to add? You're kind of silent.
I pipe in when I have something to add, usually.
Uh,
I will say that for me, going back and looking at it, the biggest change I saw was the general reduction of snark.
mhm.
Right? Like,
mhm.
the true Orsur was always like, you didn't command me to do the thing.
You didn't give me a script.
Right. And whereas when Tensoon comes around, he's kind of like, he lays into the contract thing because that's what he knows about Orsur. But he's not like a dick.
Mhm.
Or at least he's much less of one at this point.
He
He's
also
not
said-
being snobbish.
Right.
He's also kind of putting it on the bones, like, oh, these bones are allowing me to help you more, and therefore I can more. Anything else for Chapter 8?
A little bit about Zane. When Vin thinks he
yes.
looks a little familiar, it's because it's
Insane in the
Elend's brother.
Yeah.
And then he says he's insane. That's because he's being influenced by Ruin.
Because he hears a voice in his head telling him to kill everyone except for him.
Except her. Yep.
And then I wanted to ask the question. I just wanted to. I don't really remember if it's explored, but why doesn't he wear a mist cloak?
Because where his spike is placed in his back, the mist cloak rubs on it.
Oh, cool.
Where did we get that from?
In one of his POV chapters.
Huh.
I'll just trust Kay on that. That seems perfectly. Yeah.
Look
I
for
got
it
no
in
reason
upcoming
to doubt her on that.
In one of his POV chapters, he talks about the mist cloak and how he doesn't wear it because he doesn't like it rubbing against the spike that's in his back.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll be
It's
paying close attention to that later on.
yes, it's uncomfy.
Chapter 9. My only comment was, do we think that Marsh is rioting / soothing Sazed to make him go back to Luthadel?
Probably.
I think so too.
It even mentions in that chapter how the Inquisitors can riot and soothe emotions, doesn't it? It says they can't read minds, but they can influence emotions.
Yes. But I think that Sazed doesn't ever think that, Marsh would never do this to me.
Because
you know,
he doesn't really think of Marsh as an Inquisitor.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of creepy that he's like basically being influenced by Ruin, and some of the stuff he says where he's like, "This is only the beginning, Terraceman." Like, it's kind of creepy when you look back at it with that perspective.
Yeah. Anything else for 9? Very short.
Yeah.
Chapter 10.
Tindwell.
That's my only note.
Tindwell. We get to see Tindwell for the first time. Very exciting. And you can see her disapproving stare at Elend.
Yeah. You could do better. Yeah. Does she pop up immediately next chapter? I think. Because...
No, chapter 13.
Okay. So why does she take so long to come to them?
Because that army shows up at their door and goes,
well, yeah, but her whole thing is...
chapter 12 is a Sazed chapter.
So the next chapter of, Team Vin, she does make herself known.
In part 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So she comes into the city, she watches this to see what Elend is like, and then she goes to Elend.
Yeah, and then he gets called to the wall because of the thing, and then in the next their chapter, they're having a meeting in his room with the crew, and that's when she shows up to introduce herself.
That makes sense. Okay. And finally, chapter 11. I was a little bit confused. I thought Duralumin only enhances one metal.
No, it enhances all of them that you're burning at that time.
Okay. Apparently, I glossed over that. I need to redo a lot.
Have we ever seen Duralumin and Atium at the same time?
We do once.
Oh, I don't remember what that is. That sounds cool.
I won't spoil it.
We
do once.
This is the spoiler section. Come on.
It's Elend at the end of Hero of Ages when he charges.
Swiggity, do you want us to tell you?
Elend at the end of Hero of Ages, he does Duralumin and Atium, and that's how he sees kind of the whole rest of the book. It's at the very end.
You can see into the future, like you can see into the spiritual realm. Essentially,
so you can see into the future.
Yeah.
Kind of like Odium style.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets like shardic knowledge, basically. And he knows everything is going to be okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Something we didn't comment on, but I love how Spook was there. And Bree says, "Do you still speak in the backwards?" And he's like, "Wasn't aware of the knot."
Yeah.
Do you still speak in like nonsense or whatever?
Yeah.
How about?
Are you still intelligible? I think is what he says.
I don't know who said it, but they were like accusing Breeze of like, "Oh, what were you with his daughter there?"
You got caught in bed with his daughter, didn't you? Yes.
And
it's Ham. Ham is the one who.
Yeah.
Ham is the one who jokes at him about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, caught you in bed with his daughter, eh?
And then Vin basically gives a small little paragraph about, Breeze would never do that. He doesn't care about people. He cares about himself.
You know what I just want? I just want a Mistborn TV show that's kind of like in the style of like Friends. It's just like a sitcom with the gang. That's what
We
I
can
want.
get that in there on 3.
Yeah.
Here's the quote from Breeze to Spook. It's "You still an unintelligible nuisance, boy." It's like, wasn't aware of not. It's
I
like
love
you still make more sense than Hammond half the time.
I love Breeze.
I also thought it was funny that when he sees the dog, he's like, Ellen Vin is like, it's a dog, and like he's like, what is that? A dog? And it's
A
just
dog.
like he's like, thank you. I can tell it's a dog. Why is it here?
And then Ellen's like, oh, I got it for her as a birthday. You got her a wolfhound? He's like,
He's like,
what else would you
what?
get her? A poodle?
He's like, you know her. What else would you get her?
It's Vin. She's a killer. She needs a killer
So
dog.
poodles exist in the Final Empire, just as a note.
I mean,
Canon.
yeah, dogs. The
Great. Now I want to go back to the Final Empire, just like added poodles every once in a while, like teacup chihuahuas and handbags.
be funny.
That would be the
And then my
dog Breeze would
last-
have.
Something small and adorable to manipulate people.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
All Rianne would carry it around in her purse.
I could totally see her doing that.
Or Rianne has the dog and it just hates Breeze.
Constantly yups at him.
Yep. He's like trying to emotionally manipulate somebody, and you just got the dog barking at him. Like, can you see? I'm trying. Shut the heck up.
Side note, but could you use soothing on a dog?
I will check words of Brandon if you can manipulate animals.
I bet you can. And it's because we know Vin can soothe or sewer. Or, well, it's not or sewer. But anyway.
But that's a contra.
But
Yeah,
he's a
or sure it's
contra.
not.
But he's wearing a dog's body.
But it's the cognition aspect.
Yeah.
But she's like soothing the spike. That's the way I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see any animals
Maybe.
soothed? Like horses or anything?
I don't think so.
I'm not seeing anything about soothing a rioting animal.
I
No.
wonder.
Because that would be
I
a
would-
really, really useful skill.
All right.
I would guess you could. I would guess you could. It would be very easy, though. Okay, my last note is that Tensoon just straight up lies. And that I have never seen these bones before. I have no idea where they come from.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. He almost kind of gives it away a little bit. He like, he's not. He's trying to help them figure it out. It seems like, you know. He's like, oh, this was clearly done by a conjurer. Like that's what he tells
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
Well, that's what was so weird is that he always gives like half truths and, you know, I'm not going to lie directly. I will mislead. But here we've got a straight no. I have no idea where that comes from.
The best liars tell the truth most of the time.
There it is. That's all of my notes. Boy, we went through this episode really quickly.
Yeah, kind of. It seemed like a little bit of a short section. A good section, though.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it.
Anything
I mean,
else?
this is-
for this? Sorry.
This is really the like the end of part 1 is really where the book kind of actually starts, right?
Mhm.
Like this is where, I mean, shit gets real.
Yeah. We've got Vin meeting Zane. We've got, the Second Army. We've got Tensoon being revealed, kind of, or the fact there's a Contra.
I like kind of like the building blocks of Sazed being distraught right now. Like I like how Sazed is just like looking for his real purpose at this stage right now. And later we're gonna get Tindwell, and obviously they end up falling in love. And I just like reading this part again, knowing that and thinking about how like it's really set up nicely, and his whole arc is just awesome.
Mhm.
Not really a connection,
But it's still a fun point.
Yeah, you're allowed to think things are cool. Like, that can be a part of, stuff.
Yeah. Unless you think that Elend isn't, then we're gonna have problems.
Elend's a weenie.
Whoa, shots
Not
fired.
Ellen's not really cool yet.
Elend
To
has
be
always been
fair,
cool. His first
he's-
scene has him with a stack of books. He has always been cool.
He's not
He's a
cool.
weenie for another, like,
But
3/4 of a book. Just saying.
I love him, but he's not cool.
He's
So
always been
sorry.
cool. He just doesn't
He's
have
not-
anything to do. He's weak, but he's cool.
What do you mean he doesn't have anything to do? He has more to do than he is capable of handling right now. Look at his scene
Yeah,
in
but
the
all
assembly.
of that is stuff that relies on other people doing. Like the assembly stuff, that's just me making a plea, but it has to involve the other assembly members. Great. Oh, the whole, fighting the army, that's going to be more so Vin and the army and Ham.
He's
He
still
calls
running a
Iron-
country.
Yeah, but we never see him run the country.
Well, he makes speeches and stuff.
Why did you guys put me on the defensive? Why am I the one saying that Elend needs?
Because
'Cause
you
we
made a
have
pretty
nothing to
harsh
say
claim
about
there,
these
my friend,
chapters.
and
Elend doesn't get much to do, but he's still awesome.
no.
I feel like Elend is a pretty divisive character, yeah. Like, I was not expecting you two to love Elend so much.
Right?
Which I'm not
Like, that
saying
just-
he's bad.
I mean, he definitely comes into his own. Like, but at this point in the story, he's a weenie, and he's supposed to be. It's okay.
But at least he owns it.
He's a noob.
Listen, I don't think Elend is cool. I do not think Elend is cool at this point. But I do like his character, and I like seeing where he's going.
Is Kelsier cool?
Yeah.
Do you K think Kelsier is cool?
Kelsier's got swagger. Yeah, he's pretty cool.
That's
But
fair.
but yet you're still like a huge Elend fan girl, right?
I like Elend more than Kelsier, yes. Because Kelsier is kind of crazy.
So there you
He's
go.
got
Like,
the moves like
there's
Kelsier.
more
He's
than
got the
just being
moves like
cool,
Kelsier.
you know?
I never said that being cool is the end all be all. Like,
No.
It might just because I'm directly in the nerd group, so by nerd standards, he's cool, but he's still like a part of the nerd group.
Yeah, he is like someone like as like a big fantasy book fan, like you could put yourself in his shoes of like, what if I was king and also became a Mistborn?
Because if you think about it, the Mistborn trilogy is comprised of two of Ellen's favorite things, reading and Vin.
Yeah, I
But
don't have anything else to really add for this set of chapters.
me neither. Anything from you, John, UK?
nope.
I think we've touched on pretty much all there is that I would want to touch on.
Okay, then I guess that's it. That's going to be it for our show. Thank you very much for joining us in our ramblings and predictions. Please be sure to remember that there's always another connection. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Have a good one.
I'm sure that could be Sanderson could work that out really well.
Well, this is a spoiler. So you can't cut this out later. But we actually, I'm so sorry, but we do actually see that later on. We actually do see soft pushes later on in the book.
Okay, I don't remember that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember
Okay.
that either.
I
We
can't
talked
remember.
about it last
Take your
time.
word for it.
We did?
Yes.
Did we?
Yes.
I don't remember that
In
either.
the spoiler section.
My memories.
Okay. I'm going to clap my hands. We're going to come back and I'm going to comment on another thing. We can talk about this in the spoiler section.
I imagine we will.
Okay.
Okay.
3, 2.